All right, what's up, guys? It's Dynasty Life. I'm here with my boy Hammer.
Back and better than ever.
So yeah, today we're just having a late night sesh, just bullshitting. So I guess we're just going over shit that's been happening in our Dynasty League. So I made a trade. I guess we'll just start from there and then go down. There was a few different trades that happened. So anyway, yeah. So I trade Amari Cooper, Antonio Gibson, and Donovan Peoples-Jones for the 107 and DK Metcalf. So in our league, that we start 3 wide receivers. Okay, I have Cheetah, I have DJ Moore, I have Amari Cooper. Also have St. Brown and Bateman. But I was trying to get DK, and I was just kind of getting sick of this whole Amari Cooper and Watson saga bullshit that's going on. And I'm like, damn, all right, if he gets suspended for the whole year, I'm fucked. Like, kind of trying to win now. If he gets suspended for half the year, it's still like half the season. All right, it's fucked. So let me try and get DK. DK's not in the best situation himself. Maybe I can get him for not as much as, normal would if, say, Russell Wilson was still there, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, I'll definitely take DK. He's younger than Amari Cooper, gives me just, a longer time frame. And plus, who knows if DK even stays there. He could go somewhere else. He could get traded. He could just not resign when that time comes. Or maybe Geno Smith is the starting QB going in. To be fair, he was like wide receiver number 6 when he did play with Geno Smith those few games. Just saying. But I guess we'll see what happens there. I mean, there is talks that 49ers might just release Jimmy Garoppolo. That could be an answer as well. Even Baker Mayfield's not a bad option.
I did see that.
So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, my thought process was, all right, if I get the 107, because I do have Patrick Mahomes, it's a 1 QB league. So I'm like, all right, if I could get the 107 and try and get Sky Moore, and I come away with DK Metcalf, like that's a win for me. Antonio Gibson, I mean, he's replaceable. He's an RB2 now. That's just what he is. They just refuse to give him the reins. But yeah, so that was my thought process. So I don't know. What do you think, Hammer?
It's funny. I was having a conversation with Bagala, who's missing in action tonight. I mean, I can't really talk that much because I've been missing in action a little while, but I was having a conversation and I looked at it and it seemed like a lot to give up from a total value standpoint to get DK Metcalf, but I always looked at DK Metcalf as just a superior talent. You know what I mean? And I always felt that regardless of who's throwing him the ball, kind of in that DeAndre Hopkins mold where DeAndre Hopkins was catching passes from Brock Osweiler and, Davis Mills and guys of that ilk, and he was still putting up tremendous wide receiver 1 type numbers. So you got to feel like DK Metcalf's physical stature as well as his skills overall should be able to offset the limitations that the Seattle quarterback situation is currently in after the Russell Wilson trade. So I do feel like making that trade sets you up better in the long run. The total value for what you gave up this year might surpass what DK Metcalf and whoever that pick is, if it's Sky Moore. But Sky Moore is obviously going to be a rookie. DK Metcalf's not even on his second contract yet. So I think after this year, the value is going to dynamically be in your favor. For this year, it might be a little different, depending on, like I said, and you touched on it before, depending on if Deshaun Watson plays. I mean, is the quarterback situation going to be any better in Cleveland than it is in Seattle?
Yeah.
Do we know this year? Do we know? I can't answer that with any certainty. So I like DK Metcalf's abilities better than Amari Cooper in terms of being able to offset less than stellar quarterback play. So from that standpoint, I do like the trade. I think DK Metcalf's the best player in the trade. And then you get you get the 107 and you could pretty much do what you need to do in that spot. So it's a good trade for you. I don't know how much it helps the other team in terms of giving away DK Metcalf and a top 7 pick, but he does get some nice parts when Deshaun Watson comes back. Is that 8 games? Is that 10? Is it a season?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is DK, I would just rather have for Amari in the long run and for even now, because we don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. Yep. So for me, Peoples-Jones was just a throw-in. There was somebody I got off a waiver like after the season. So I had picked him up just to kind of back up Amari Cooper. So he would just kind of throw in icing, just threw him in there, get him off my roster or whatever. So for me, the trade really was just DK Metcalf for Amari Cooper, and it was the 107 for Antonio Gibson. And Antonio Gibson, no matter how much I love him, and we all just, we know how good like he can be. We see it. The Commanders, whatever they're called nowadays.
I still call them the football team. I don't give a shit.
They just refuse to give this guy the reins. A pass catching guy as well, could be a 3-down back, but they just cement him. He's just cemented now in this RB2 zone. Now they're saying he'll split carries with the new guy, which I think Gibson eventually is just going to his superior to him, and that would just show after a while. So I'm not really worried about that, but he is just an RB2. But the main difference is in RB2 range, when you're talking about like RB12 to RB20, right? The difference in points is like 1.5. So it's not a huge difference. So I'm like, all right, I have Dalvin Cook as my number 1. So I'm like, I can afford to get rid of Gibson because I don't know what that situation is going to be anyway. So if I could get up off that question mark and grab the 107 and be able to grab Sky Moore and just solidify my, wide receiving core for the future, then I'm like, yeah, I'm in for it. Fuck it.
Yeah, from a strategy and a tactical standpoint in terms of filling out the roster and being able to shape the roster the way you want it, giving up running backs, especially RB2s, is not that big of a deal because you can go into a draft or you can pick somebody up or make a trade and get somebody that may not be as big of a name or as recognizable, but still give you the production without the drop off. As you said, 1.5 between RB12 and RB20. That's minuscule. and nowadays you could get some of those pass catching running backs, those pass catching 3rd down backs, and just off the receptions alone in a half PPR league, the drop off's not gonna be as great. So it makes sense.
That was my thing. He's not gonna win me the league was my main thing. So I'm like, all right, let me just move off him now before he does lose more value. Once we get closer to the season or into the season, he might lose some value. If they really are like splitting carries and stuff like that.
So I guess my question to you is then, what's the best case scenario for DK Metcalf this upcoming season?
The best case for this upcoming season, I mean, the best case would probably be top 10. I mean, but worst case is like top 25. And that's like worst, so even if he, is top 20, but again, I'm not even relying on it really as my wide receiver 1. So, it works for me. He might take a slight hit this year, but going forward, who knows what it could be.
Listen,
but then, I'm not relying on him for that wide receiver 1 type number. So,
and I think that's also important too, because when you're picking up guys and when you're trading for guys, what role you expect them to fill is going to be big, right? Because if you were trading for DK Metcalf and expecting him to be your wide receiver one, then you might be in trouble, because if he doesn't produce wide receiver one numbers on a consistent week in, week out basis, you'd be in big trouble. If he's going in as your, wide receiver two, wide receiver three, then it's like, okay, now I don't have to rely on him for that heavy lifting from that wide receiver position. And let's face it, wide receiver production can win you a week. Big time wide receiver production can win you a week, or a championship for that matter, a big time wide receiver season, as evidenced by Cooper Kupp. So, it's
absolutely. So
yeah, that's critical. So I mean, listen, if you're slotting him in as your wide receiver two, wide receiver three, then you're in really good shape.
Yeah, and getting the pick was big, because to have the chance to get Sky Moore and pair him up with Mahomes for the next 10 years, just the possibility of it, whether it happens or whether it doesn't, whether it busts or whatever, it's just worth the chance, worth the shot. Like, for me, I think he'll be a wide receiver two with wide receiver one upside. But then again, having the combo just multiplies that even more. So even at worst, if he's a wide receiver three, I'm fine for having that for the next 10 years with the combo as my wide receiver three. So I can't really lose, I think, in that.
I think especially with him, as I said with DK, you're not expecting top flight, top level production. If he's your wide receiver three flex, that's golden. If he gets anywhere into the wide receiver two range, then you're in business, because now you have so many other options. You have other guys that you could use as trade bait if you need to, fill a hole if a guy gets hurt. If you want to make another move, whatever the case may be. So
I do want to make another move. I guess we'll talk about that when we get to the end, because I did make another trade. But all right, anything else you want to say about that particular trade or situation?
Nah. Like I said, the best player in the trade was DK. So I usually say if you land the best player, then
let me ask you, if you were in my shoes and had the team that I had, would you have made that trade?
Probably, just because of the rationale behind it, not necessarily to fill a hole per se. It was more of, let me move off some guys that might be question marks in this upcoming season and lose value, as opposed to waiting too long and not being able to get the maximum that you could in terms of a package deal as well. So I probably would have made the move just because I was getting the best player back and the top and the 107 in a wide receiver heavy draft. So it seems like a win-win from that standpoint. So yeah, I would have definitely made the trade.
All right, and I guess going to the next trade here. Let's see, we got Davante Adams and James Conner for Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Anthony Schwartz, and the 114. So I guess you can throw out Anthony Schwartz. I guess he's just a throw-in. He doesn't really matter here. So you got Mike Williams, Eckler, and the 114 for Davante Adams and James Conner.
Yeah. So for Justified, it was the trade he had to make. He's been searching for a wide receiver one, a bona fide wide receiver one, because Mike Williams did produce over the course of the entire season wide receiver one numbers in the totality, but the consistency wasn't there. So if you're going into the season with Mike Williams as your wide receiver one and you're expecting 15 to 18 a game, you're rolling the dice essentially. With Davante Adams, you know exactly what you're going to get. You're probably going to get 15 to 18 a game on the low end. Now, he's in a new situation. He's not with Aaron Rodgers anymore. But as we chronicled in some of our previous episodes, Bagala, who's not here, I could speak for him. And, we think Derek Carr is going to be just fine with him, getting him the ball and getting him to the production where he has 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 100 catches, even if that's a tick down from the past couple of years where Aaron, 100 grabs for 1,400 yards and 10, 12 touchdowns is just fine. And he's going to get the consistency. So I really do like the consistency that Davante provides. So that's a win for me. And then getting James Conner in there as your everyday RB2 or flex for this team. James Conner is going to be the flex guy.
Yeah. I mean,
that's big.
It's, I guess when you just initially look at it, right? I'm like, shit, all right, give me the 3 for 2. Like, give me the Mike Williams, because I don't feel he'll be that far off from Davante Adams if he's healthy. Austin Eckler and James Conner, I guess you can kind of say
Eckler's better because of the receiving.
Yeah, Eckler's definitely better because of receiving, but they're similar as far as where they might finish, fantasy wise. And then the 114. So it's like, all right, I'd rather have maybe, that extra piece in it, but then you have to look at, the rosters as well and, what that thought process is. And like you said, Mike Williams, relying on him as your absolute number 1 wide receiver in the league where we start 3 wide receivers and a flex.
Not going to work.
It's tough, right? Unless you got some absolute bomb running backs and flex, which that team actually does, but he wanted that security and that number 1.
He cashed in a few of those chips for security at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. So as much as I love Mike Williams and the upside he has, of course, playing with Herbert, he got the contract. If he's healthy, he could easily be wide receiver 1. But Davante Adams, just gives him that consistency. Exactly what you're going to get. He's a safer option.
Agreed.
That's the best way to push it.
He is a little bit older. Davante is a little bit
older, but the way that he plays and then the way that Mike Williams, they're both next 3 years or so, Yeah. I don't know if you want Mike Williams after his contract is up, he might not even stay there. So, he might be done at that point anyway. So
the 114 is nice though on the other end because there could still be some value at the 114.
Exactly.
You might be looking at a Christian Watson, somebody in that mold, in that area, depending on how the draft shakes out. But there's still some good value at the 114. So I wouldn't underrate that pick and look at it as a totally one-sided deal just because Justified got Davante Adams. We tend to think of Davante Adams as this, unstoppable force, but he is going to a new situation. So, I think his talent outweighs it, but it's just a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair deal for both sides.
I would agree with that.
And it works for both sides. But initially, just looking at it, I would rather take the Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and that 114 side.
Let me ask you this.
But again, depends on that roster construction.
Let me ask you this. Who is the best player in this deal?
Who's the best player in this deal?
Is it Eckler? Is it Davante?
It might be.
That's tough.
It might be Eckler. It might be Eckler, but then again, depends on your roster construction.
I'm just talking about strictly from a pure production standpoint of what you're gonna get.
I'd probably rather have Austin Eckler. Yeah, I'd probably rather have Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I can't. But I can't argue. I can't argue either way. You can make a case for either way. So, so that happened on that trade there. Let's see what else. What else happened in that league? Somebody dropped Antonio Brown. Bye-bye.
About time.
Couple Rashard Perryman pickup. Okay. Juwan Winfrey pickup. Okay.
We had the Bateman deal.
Okay, then here's my other trade. Another trade that happened. This was another trade that I made. So after losing my RB2 in Gibson and losing,
you were pretty high on Bateman, though. You were
very high.
I'm putting him out there.
I'm very high
The
on
second
Bateman.
coming.
So let me tell you the
Hold on,
context
hold
of
on.
what kind
Full
of happened.
disclosure: if you look back at the game tape, you called him Rashad the God Bateman. That's what you said.
Listen,
Those words came out of your mouth.
listen, y'all, you're gonna be surprised. I think he's gonna be very good. But there also is that one little question mark of God damn it, he's on the Ravens.
And he gets hurt.
And it's just so inconsistent with Lamar Jackson. Yes, Hollywood Brown finished as a wide receiver 2 last year, which I think Rashad Bateman is right there in that kind of range. But and I did have high hopes for him, and he was on my bench. So that was just, I'm just was trying to let him gain value. Finally, he gained value, right? So this is what happened. I got that 107 pick, and I'm thinking, okay, now I can draft Sky Moore, perfect, kind of right in that range. And then talking to the guy that has the 105 pick, oh, I'm gonna take Sky Moore. Oh shit! So now I'm like, fuck. I'm like, damn, I really want Sky Moore, but I don't need him, right? I don't need to give up too much. So we were in talks, we were negotiating. He wanted Cheetah for just straight up to 105. I'm like, no, hell no. I'm not taking myself out of contention and doing that, like just for Sky Moore. It's not
That's
not
cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's stupid.
So I'm like, all right, worst comes to worst. Okay, that person takes Sky Moore. What am I left with? Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, not bad. Okay, I'll take that instead of giving up and keep Cheetah instead of giving up, somebody. So I'm like, shit, like, all right. So those talks just ended. All right, stalled. So I'm like, damn, I also need an RB2. So I'm looking through the league, looking through people's teams, looking through the benches. Look at this one team, got a couple nice running backs, young running backs that he's probably going to want to keep. And I don't really want to pay anything expensive.
And he's probably going to draft Breece Hall.
I just need an RB2. I don't want anything expensive at this point, but I'm like, oh shit, okay, Tony Pollard or Naheem Hines, right? So Hines, they're saying, oh, I draft him in fantasy. The coach is saying whatever, I'm not necessarily going to believe that. I think Jonathan Taylor is just so good that I've got to see it first before I'm trying to spend for that.
Listen, Naeem Hines is really good, but he's just playing behind an old world running back.
Exactly. So I'm like, all right, Tony Pollard. So I hit him up, what do you want for Tony Pollard? Like, I'm not trying to give up much, but I'm like, all right, I'll give you Fryermuth, I'll give you some picks. He's like, is that all you're willing to give up? I'm like, well, anybody's really available for the right price. Like, I'm willing to negotiate anything. Like, what's good? Who do you want? Oh, I really like Bateman, he tells me. All right. So Bateman's on my bench, really, at this point. And then, like I said, he's playing with the Ravens. He is really good. I think we'll see more of that. But I'm like, all right, if I give him up, then it doesn't really hurt me much at all. Plus, I'm giving him up now before he possibly disappoints during the season, or Lamar Jackson gets hurt, again, or something like that.
It feels like there's too many variables with him.
So I'm like, even though I do have high hopes for him, I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me get rid of that question mark. Even though Tony Pollard is still behind Zeke, but decent RB2, but has that crazy upside, and he has the 104 pick. Okay, so I'm like, all right, if I can get in front of the guy with the 105 pick to 104 pick, then I can just guarantee myself Sky Moore. So basically, I looked at this trade as like Rashad Bateman for Tony Pollard and Sky Moore for like Chris Olave, I guess.
But as you said, Sky Moore is worth more to you than he is to somebody else.
Exactly, because if I can get that combo set, and like I said, even at worst, if he ends up as a wide receiver 3, it's still an extra plus.
That works. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but then I'm like, damn, I move up to the 104. Shit. At that point, then Kenneth Walker might be available. Treylon Burks might be available. I'm like, dang, do I really try and go one of those? I mean, the safest bet for me is to go with Sky Moore, even though, Burks is going to be the guy jumping into a bunch of targets there. I'm like,
I think that
I don't know. I think it's just the safest.
That brings up a really good point, that the higher you move up in the draft, is it worth taking Sky Moore when there's probably going to be guys that are going to be more valuable now? So now by moving up in the draft, you created an additional problem for yourself rather than solving what you thought was going to be a problem. I wouldn't call it a problem, but
I did kind of, but at the same time, I'm like, Sky Moore is still probably the safest bet for me. Like, I don't know.
And I've been thinking about now he's rolling around in it.
And I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, all right, well, the guy at number 5, he also said he likes Burks. So maybe if Burks is there, I trade down 1 pick, and just maybe he throws me like a 3rd-round pick or something, just something.
It's possible, but I think you did all this work to get to that 4th spot that you just have to go with your original game plan and not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that was that's my thought. That was my thought process on the trade and why I decided I needed to kind of move up and also to grab Tony Pollard. In my RB2 right now, I have Rashad Penny, and then I've got Pollard on the bench, and I've got a bunch of like backup running backs to like that will actually get the load if that starting running back gets hurt, right? Khalil Herbert, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got him. So Montgomery gets hurt. I got the guy that's going to step up into that 3-down role. Who else? I just picked up random. Chris Evans, the backup for Joe Mixon, where he'll just come in and grab that.
Yeah, it's always good to grab those guys, and also too, they could be trade bait for the guy that has the main guy. So you can say, hey, listen, if you want the handcuff, if Joe Mixon is out for a month or 6 or an extended period of time, then that value goes up. You could trade or you could plug him in.
Exactly. And then I picked up Damian Williams. They said Patterson is now going to be running routes. Okay. So who's carrying the ball there? Algier and Damian Williams. I mean, it's just random ones that it's just that possibility that if it happens could be some league winner type shit. Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was my thought process on that particular trade. So what do you think about that trade?
Listen, it seems like you were playing the long game here and moving pieces around the board to navigate to where you wanted to go. I do think, as I mentioned before, I think you created a dilemma for yourself without even realizing it, because the higher you move up, the better pieces you may be able to pick up that might have a more immediate impact than Sky Moore. You talked about Kenneth Walker. You talked about at the 104, you might be able to get Drake London.
Yeah, but then again, I don't need anybody. I'm not pressed for somebody to step in right away to do that. So even if Sky Moore takes 2 years or 3 years to step into like that wide receiver 1 role, and Kelsey will be gone sooner or later. So Juju's on a 1-year deal. So somebody.
I was gonna touch on that just because the wide receiver or the pass catching room in Kansas City feels a little different than it's felt. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is gone. You mentioned Juju being on a 1-year deal. Travis Kelce's 30 plus years old. They did sign Valdez-Scantling to a multi-year deal, but is he even a number 2? Probably not. He's more like a number 3 wide receiver in that offense. So, maybe the original plan is to just stick with Sky Moore. Don't, think about it too much. I know we got the draft coming up in about 2 weeks. So I think you stick with the game plan. If you really want Sky Moore and that's what you did all this work and moved all these pieces around to do, I would say go get him. But I could see how your mind would drift a little bit with all the options that are going to be available at the 104.
Yeah, I mean, he's still landed in the best spot, like, of everybody. And the guy is a crisp route runner. I mean, I don't see how much could go wrong. And like I said, at worst, if he's a wide receiver 3, okay, fine. I'll take him as my wide receiver 3 with the combo with Patrick Mahomes. Absolutely fine. So even if I miss, it won't be a bad miss. At least that's what I feel like. The floor is high still. So
yeah, no, it's definitely high. And I think that the word you used was safe. It's the safest pick at that spot. And if there's anything if there's anything you want in fantasy, especially from the wide receiver position, you want him to go to a team with a good quarterback. And Kansas City is probably the 2 or 3 top destinations you want to go. If you're a rookie wide receiver, Buffalo, I could think of the Chargers, the Chiefs, Green Bay, places like that, where at least the quarterback is just entrenched and is going to be so consistent there that you feel good about the upside of that particular rookie wide receiver. So he's in a damn good situation, and I think he'll be able to produce. I think he will finish somewhere in that wide receiver 3 category, just because there's so many other proven guys in that Kansas City offense.
Oh, at first, definitely. At least for the first year, definitely, without a doubt.
Right. So, like you said, if you're just relying on him to be a flex guy at best, that's perfectly fine. And that's where I could see him, ending up flex wide receiver 3. Maybe if somebody gets hurt, if Juju gets hurt, or something like that, and he starts to emerge, then that's really good upside.
Yeah. I mean, they did say he's fighting for that wide receiver 2 role opposite Juju right now. So we'll see what happens with that as well. But yeah, that's kind of what's been happening in our league. Just me, I guess, making some moves. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I made my team better and also younger, so I like that.
Yeah. Nah, it's you did what you had to do to get the guys that you wanted. I mean, that's kind of what making trades is all about. You target guys and you go out there and do what you got to do without pillaging your entire roster. So
what else is going on? What about your team? What are you trying to do? Is there moves that you're trying to tell us what's going on with you? What's your thoughts? Do you got questions? Are you worried about anything? Are you
No, I'm not particularly worried about my team, to be honest. I've made a ton of moves. We haven't really talked about it. Our moves, myself, Bagala, you. We try and get around to everybody else in the league. But from my standpoint, with my team, I had a ton of depth at a lot of the positions, and I felt like it was time to cash those chips in as well. I did win the championship last year, but I felt like if I stood pat, I wouldn't be able to repeat, because a lot of things had to go well. So I did pick up Jamar Chase, which, having Joe Burrow, that was huge. I don't think we touched on that. We had a lot of things, falling out over the course of the offseason. I did pick up George Kittle, which was another addition for me. So I filled in that tight end spot. To be honest, going into the season, that was my only target, was a solid tight end, a bona fide wide tight end 1. Now, tight end 1 is, I was talking about like a top 3, top 4 tight end talent. So I was able to target George Kittle and pick him up, which I was really happy about. And then most recently, I made a trade. I had Jalen Hurts on my bench. Joe Burrow turned out to be my full-time starter after he went just absolutely nuclear in the playoffs for me last year and won me the championship over my counterpart sitting across from me. So he knows what Joe Burrow's capable of doing in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was some bullshit, but
Joe Burrow saved my bacon. He really did. So yeah, picking up Jamar Chase and having that Chase to Burrow combination is just probably about as good as it gets in terms of a young wide receiver quarterback combo. And then the last trade I made might have been controversial, but I got rid of Jalen Hurts and I picked up Damian Harris and Hayden Hurst. Now, Hayden Hurst also is on Cincinnati, which bodes well for me. He is their top tight end pass catcher. So in case George Kittle gets hurt, now I got a bona fide catcher, pass catcher at the tight end spot, and he just so happens to play with my quarterback. So I felt like that for me, and I wasn't gonna play Jalen Hurts. Last year, I was in this flip-flop thing where I had Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow, and I was going back and forth, and it would bite me sometimes. So I really just wanted to cash in my chips and get top-end talent, and I feel like I balanced out my roster well. My running backs, not as strong as it was last year, but I still feel like it's adequate enough with Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll just wrap it up there, and we'll come back with another one maybe tomorrow. But yeah, we'll see y'all. We'll talk about some more shit that's going on or whatever else. Just comment below. All right, we out.